Yesterday, basically, that was applauded. Not so much, maybe it was anti-Trump, because everything's anti-Trump these days, but it was more pro-Iranian in so many different regards. Nothing against the Iranian people, but the Islamic regime wants to kill Americans, and has done so, as you point out, since 1979. Let me just pivot just a little bit question here, because I would love to have your thought about this. I hear time and time and time again from the other side that the rich are not paying their fair share. Can you tell me, did the working families tax cuts, was it something just for the rich?
Those are under TCJA, that the highest income brackets paid 10% higher. And I can see that especially for the president's signature policy.
In this House Ways and Means Committee exchange, Representative Greg Murphy of North Carolina delivers a pointed reminder about historical memory and national priorities. He highlights how quickly public discourse forgets recent economic pain, 21%, cumulative inflation under the prior administration, while downplaying current challenges in favor of partisan triggers. Murphy argues that concerns over everyday issues, like gas prices, pale in comparison to the existential threat of a nuclear-armed Iran.
Thank you, and I'll recognize Mr. Murphy for 5 minutes.
You know, memory is a wonderful thing to study.
I think George Orwell called it memory holing.
Yeah. So it's really hilarious, I think, actually sad and pathetic on another hand, that people don't remember. You know, I'm sorry that people get triggered when they talk about the former president, but 21% cumulative inflation during 4 years, which I think, maybe you're smarter than I am in this regard, contributes a lot to what's going on. Now, that said, I think it's actually pathetic that the other side of this dais places more concern about talking about gas prices. They didn't talk about gas prices during the last administration when they were higher actually than they were now, but they placed more concern about that than the fact that their children and grandchildren might get irradiated by a nuclear weapon one day. And they were actually finally doing something about that.
I couldn't agree more, Congress. As someone with children who hopes to have grandchildren one day, President Trump is future-proofing this Iranian regime against having a nuclear weapon. And the short-term challenges that we are seeing now, it would be nothing compared to that.
Yeah, and you know, I totally commiserate those, especially lower income individuals where it's harder right now. Absolutely, understand. But if we look back on one of the great historical lessons of Britain during the Battle of Britain and the things that they took on to save the fact that they didn't want to be destroyed by Nazi Germany, the same thing that we don't want to be destroyed by a radical Islamic regime, which is in their constitution to do so, then hardships sometimes are challenging.
Well, I think the best analogy here is World War I, that Germany hadn't declared war on the U.S. We just knew that it was a menace, that there was a cancer that had to be stopped. And we have cut the head off the snake. Everyone should remember number of Americans who have died at the hands of the Iranians since 1979. They are the world's leading sponsor of state terrorism, whether it's the USS Cole through their proxies, whether it was the barracks in Beirut, and on and on.
And yeah, we had a vote yesterday, basically, that was applauded. Not so much, maybe it was anti-Trump, because everything's anti-Trump these days, but it was more pro-Iranian in so many different regards. Nothing against the Iranian people, but the Islamic regime wants to kill Americans, and has done so, as you point out, since 1979. Let me just pivot just a little bit question here, because I would love to have your thought about this. I hear time and time and time again from the other side that the rich are not paying their fair share. Can you tell me, did the working families tax cuts, was it something just for the rich?
Those are under TCJA, that the highest income brackets paid 10% higher. And I can see that especially for the president's signature policy, 99% of the filers on no tax and tips make less than 200%, make less than $200,000. No tax and overtime, 6% of the filers. 75% make less than 100.
So I've asked them.
We heard. The rich don't get tips. The rich, don't need the senior deduction.
Yeah, so I've just asked them repeatedly, tell me what that percentage is. What is the fair share? The fact that the top 1% donate 1/3 of all the donations in this country. Yeah, maybe they should do more. I don't have no issue with that, but that's a voluntary thing. And you've read the book Atlas Shrugged, right?
Yes, sir.
Don't you think we're seeing a lot of lessons from that today?
I think we're seeing more lessons from 1984.
Well, yes, indeed, indeed. Let me pivot just a little bit to a challenging topic, and that's our debt, and the fact that I think we've had pro-growth policies put forth in our tax bill, which may not be readily apparent right now, right? So I wonder if you could just give me what you think is what our projections are going to be, debt to GDP, what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years with all the investment that's going to be coming in.
Well, as I said earlier, Congressman, that we are creating highly productive assets that will be generating the high returns that will then go into the tax base.
Yeah.
This manufacturing renaissance that we're seeing creates jobs in two ways. The companies will be paying more taxes. They availed themselves, as we wanted them to, of the 100% full expensing on equipment for equipment, for factories, for farm structures, and that will go into the tax base. I call it the slingshot effect.
Right.
You pull it back, and then it starts paying off.
Yeah, it's like a slinky. You know, if God forbid there was a Democrat that got into the next White House, they're going to come in and claim all the wonderful benefits that we're going to see at that point in time. Just kind of like the Biden administration talked about all the job creation after they destroyed all the jobs and then just restored them. So thank you for the work that you do. You are doing the good Lord's work in a very, very challenging environment. You're deeply appreciated. Thank you. I'll yield back.
Secretary Scott Bessent strongly agrees, framing President Trump's actions as future-proofing America and the world against a radical Islamic regime acquiring nuclear weapons. He emphasizes that short-term economic discomforts are minor compared to the long-term catastrophe of nuclear proliferation. Bessent draws a parallel to Britain's resolve during the Battle of Britain, enduring hardship to prevent destruction by a totalitarian threat. Murphy reinforces this by invoking World War I analogies, stopping a menace before it fully declares war on the United States. Both men stress Iran's long history as the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. They reference attacks like the USS Cole, the Beirut barracks bombing, and the many American lives lost since 1979. Murphy notes a recent congressional vote that he views as effectively pro-regime rather than pro-Iranian people, underscoring that opposition to the Islamic regime is not hostility toward civilians, but self-defense against an ideology explicitly hostile to America. The conversation then pivots to domestic economics. Murphy challenges the narrative that the wealthy aren't paying their fair share, pointing out that Trump-era tax policies like the TCJ increased the share paid by top brackets, while policies such as no tax on tips and overtime primarily benefit working families. 96 to 99% of beneficiaries earning under $200,000. Bessent adds that these pro-growth measures, including full expensing for manufacturing investments, are laying the foundation for a manufacturing renaissance and a slingshot effect, where initial revenue costs yield stronger long-term tax bases and job creation. Murphy closes by praising Bessent's work in a tough environment, warning against future administrations claiming credit for results they didn't create, echoing how the prior administration took credit for restoring jobs they had disrupted. The exchange blends foreign policy resolve with optimism about domestic economic strategy, prioritizing long-term security and growth over short-term political optics.